Purpose of the Government of India Act, 1935. The Government of India Act, 1935, was the most extensive constitutional reform introduced by the British Parliament during the colonial period, and its purpose was shaped by decades of political pressure, administrative difficulties, and rising Indian demands for self-rule. The primary purpose of the Government of India Act, 1935, was to restructure the constitutional framework of British India in a way that granted Indians a greater role in governance while still keeping ultimate control with the British. In essence, the Government of India Act, 1935, attempted to strike a balance between reform and restraint. One major purpose of the Government of India Act, 1935, was to introduce provincial autonomy. Before 1935, the provinces were tightly controlled by British governors and executives. Through the Government of India Act, 1935, these provinces were supposed to receive their own elected governments with authority over subjects like education, health, agriculture, and public works. This was intended to give Indians a sense of genuine self-governance at the provincial level. By allowing ministers responsible to elected legislatures to run provincial affairs, the Government of India Act, 1935, hoped to smooth tensions and demonstrate that cooperation with the colonial government could produce meaningful political power. However, the Government of India Act, 1935 also had a second, broader purpose: the creation of an all-India federation. This proposed federation would unite British Indian provinces and princely states under a common federal structure. The British hoped that, through the Government of India Act, 1935, a federation would create administrative unity, stabilize relationships between diverse political entities, and maintain British influence by placing defense, foreign affairs, and key financial matters at the federal center. Although the federation envisioned by the Government of India Act, 1935 never came into existence, primarily because princely states refused to join, it remained a central purpose of the Act. A further purpose of the Government of India Act, 1935, was to redefine and limit the nature of Indian political participation. The expansion of the electorate was significant. Millions more Indians could now vote, but the system still relied heavily on separate electorates, communal representation, and property-based qualifications. Through this structure, the Government of India Act, 1935, aimed to manage and channel Indian political aspirations without allowing radical or anti-colonial forces to gain control. By widening political participation while maintaining fragmentation, the Government of India Act, 1935, sought to preserve British authority even while appearing to liberalize the political system. Another important purpose of the Government of India Act, 1935, was administrative. The British found India increasingly difficult to govern due to economic pressures, social unrest, linguistic diversity, and political mobilization. The Government of India Act, 1935, attempted to rationalize governance, clarify responsibilities, and modernize the colonial state. It divided powers between the center and the provinces through new legislative lists and reorganized the bureaucracy to improve efficiency. By tightening central control over critical areas like defense and finance while decentralizing routine governance to the provinces, the Government of India Act, 1935, aimed to create a more workable and resilient administrative framework. Finally, the Government of India Act, 1935, served a political purpose: to respond to the growing momentum of the Indian national movement, especially after the civil disobedience movement. The British government hoped that by offering limited autonomy through the Government of India Act, 1935, it could weaken the push for complete independence. The act was meant to be a constitutional compromise, enough reform to satisfy moderates, but not enough to surrender real imperial authority. In practice, however, the Government of India Act, 1935, ended up strengthening the national movement by proving that Indians could successfully run provincial governments and manage administrative responsibilities. In summary, the Government of India Act, 1935, was designed to reorganize the constitutional and administrative machinery of British India, expand Indian participation in governance, test federal principles, preserve British supremacy, and respond to growing demands for self-rule. Although imperfect and never fully implemented as intended, the Government of India Act, 1935, ultimately shaped the structure of both the Indian and Pakistani constitutions after independence.